Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Wrestling Doesn't Make Sense, the pro wrestling podcast where we talk about stuff that doesn't make any sense. And once again, the gift of 2020, we are blessed with some more bullshit garbage to talk about. All
Woo!
right. Wow, professional wrestling, you're a real treat this year. You know what I mean? You're really spoiling us. So basically, what happened is on this week's episode of Monday Night Raw, whatever that is, like the beginning of August, for context, they were hyping up the return of Shane McMahon, which is interesting because no offense, but I don't think anybody was missing him too much.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was like, when are we gonna get Shane McMahon back on the show? So to answer those questions, this week, that's when we're getting Shane McMahon back on the show, and he brought with him what he seemed to be hyping up as something of his own, like, inception. That's the way it seemed to me from the whole show. It seemed that they were very heavy on, like, this is Shane McMahon's idea. It seems to be his thing that he's bringing to the program. Can I just say, by the way, that we both watched this episode of Monday Night Raw,
Mm-hmm.
to see what all this hubbub is about. And this is the first time, I don't know about you, it's the first time I watched an episode of Monday Night Raw in a long ass time.
Yeah, same here.
Like, I haven't watched it at all this year. This is definitely the first of the year. God knows when the last time I watched an episode of Monday Night Raw was. So already that was an experience.
Mm-hmm.
Let me start real quick by saying the actual show, fucking Monday Night Raw, it wasn't super good, but it also wasn't terrible.
Mm.
Like, there was bits that I'm like, all right, this is fine. There were other bits where I'm like, I don't think so. Like, I didn't like the Nia Jax bit.
Yeah, that didn't really work for me either, to be honest.
There's a lot of replays, especially of the Rey Mysterio, Seth Rollins feud, which I understand because it helped fill in some blanks for me, and also because it's a pandemic show. I don't mind them putting a few more replays and things like that in to kind of make it easier for themselves. That makes sense. Although I hear that the constant replays are like a real problem with Raw and SmackDown these days anyway,
Yeah.
because it's hard to fill 3 hours of TV. Who would have thunk it? There was a weird thing where it sounded like Bray Wyatt kept saying "Let me in." Did you hear that? Did you notice it?
Yeah. I was wondering if that was like the very end of some sort of commercial for SmackDown on Friday, which was getting cut off.
Maybe, but it was very strange. Um, the microphones kept cutting out, which apparently had something to do with a mysterious group of people destroying like an electrical, like, unit
Generator.
outside. Yeah, some kind of
Yeah.
generator outside, and some kind of box full of equipment. Equipment, by the way, that just appeared to be the caster wheels on those big equipment boxes. It's a box full of wheels, but it fell over. So all through the show that they seem to be hyping, subtly as it was, but they seem to be hyping up the fact that things were going wrong, which is
Yeah.
a really weird thing to hype up on your own show.
Absolutely. Like the fact that they weren't really hyping it that much as well. It just kind of was happening in the background with like like the sort of signal feed kind of cutting out and stuff, and the mics not working 100% of the time, and lights going on and off and stuff. And it's just like, okay, so if I was like a casual viewer who just tuned in, like with no context whatsoever, and saw that, I'd be like, what the hell is this shit show? Like, they need to get their stuff together and like present this properly so they're not having all these issues.
Right, that's what I thought. I'm like, this is like the biggest wrestling company in the world, and they're doing this angle, which I assume is going somewhere. But
Mm.
all it did was, through this 3 hour show, just made it seem like they were really, like, low rate.
Yeah.
It's just weird, like, because they didn't explain any of it in the show. It made it seem like, oh, they just got, everything was unlucky. I mean, obviously it's a work, but like you said, if you're a casual viewer, you'd be like, I don't get it. I'm not gonna watch this show anymore because it doesn't seem like a very professional show, you know?
Yeah. And like the dudes who attacked the generator thing as well, like it looked a lot like the ninjas who've been hanging out with Akira Tozawa, like all
Mm.
dressed in black and stuff. So like if I didn't know any better, I think those ninjas were for some reason like attacking this generator to, I guess, uh, cause some, I don't know, chaos or whatever for some reason. But it's none of it was very clear. None of it was, you know, very like,
Good.
well, yeah, good. But like they sort of hyped it up before Raw that this is going to be like the night where a new faction debuts and stuff.
Right.
And if that was it, that was like, well, okay, it was really underwhelming. I'm not
Right.
sure how that's supposed to spark any interest, but hey,
I am super confused. They were hyping up this new stable, this new faction. Where is it? It's not the Beatdown Clan or whatever they're called now, the Hurt Business.
mm-hmm,
It's not them because they're already established themselves a couple of weeks ago, right?
yeah,
Um, so what the fuck? Like that was really confusing. Like, is it just those five masked people who set something on fire? Like that's not a great way to debut a stable in a
no,
professional wrestling company, you know. So the whole show was like a real mixed bag. Like I didn't get it for there was some stuff that was okay, but for everything that was okay, there was just another bit of like, what are you doing? You know,
mm,
they seemed to cancel each other out, and then we got to what I believe was like the third hour where Shane McMahon came out and did his business,
yes,
where he was like, "Welcome to Raw Underground." Which, could I just say, it's a little strange when we see shots of like Raw Underground before that. You know, you see him outside the door, like, "Ooh, don't go in the door. There's a big scary man standing outside the door." And then we go inside the door, where it's some kind of fucking, Fight Club thing
mm,
supposedly. And Shane McMahon's like, "Yeah, beat that guy up." So we already see like two or three shots of inside there before Shane McMahon says, "Hey, welcome to the Raw Underground." And you're like, "Well, thanks, man. It feels like we've been here for the last 2 hours, you know?" What is it the Raw Underground is going to give to us, the viewers? It's going to satisfy our wrestling needs in a way that the previous 2 hours haven't done. And the answer is, I don't know.
yeah,
There doesn't seem to be any clear indication as to what Raw Underground is, or what it has to offer, or what the point of it is, or I don't know.
yeah. It's pretty baffling. Like when it came back to properly introduce it to the audience, like all Shane said to kind of explain what it is it's a place where there's very little rules, where there's lots of excitement, where there's carnage, chaos, and all these little things that he's really excited to see. But it's like, okay, that doesn't really define anything. Like, what the fuck's going on here? It's just like a warehouse setting with a ring with no ropes or anything. So what's going on?
Right, like what is it? What is Raw Underground?
Yeah, it's pretty
Because
simple question.
right, if you're gonna give us a thing, tell us what the fuck it is. Otherwise, what are we gonna do about it? Like, um, and also it wasn't the full hour. It was Shane McMahon. He's like, "Welcome to Raw Underground. We're gonna come to you live every last hour of Raw," and
Mm.
then like part of a supposed shoot fight happened, and there were a couple of those fights, and like most of them were clearly like clearly worked.
Yeah.
Like some of the the punches and the forearms and stuff, you're like, come on, man.
Hmm.
Immediately nobody is buying this as a real legitimate fucking shoot fight.
Yeah, yeah.
These are clearly like very, very worked punches going on here. But then like they do one or like one like segment of it, like the first one was this big guy and he like beat up 2 or 3 dudes. And then Shane McMahon, who I guess is also the referee or some kind of official, just kind of bounced around the ring, was like, that's enough. He's had enough. Even though there already was a referee there. And like, I don't want to sound like a square, but I've never been to underground, fighting ring. So I don't know. Do they need a referee?
I wouldn't have thought so.
Right.
I would have thought like you just beat each other up until some guy can't carry on fighting.
Right. So do you think they need 2 referees? Because I don't think that any of that was necessary.
Yeah.
One thing I liked was that it was a ring, but they kept like the ring posts.
Yeah, that was really
I
weird.
don't know if when you assemble a ring, you need the ring posts to like make the floor. I wouldn't have thought so. I thought the ring posts were really just to keep the ropes in place. But that was a nice touch, don't you think? We'll give him the ring posts. Because why the fuck not? And also, you were like, it's got a little bit of like a warehouse kind of vibe to it. But really, it was just in a room.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, it was just in like a room of the fucking building. They're like, this isn't underground. This isn't in like the fuck. You know what I mean? Like, it's in your building.
Yeah.
Just in one of the rooms of your massive building. So they would do this bit, Shane McMahon introduces a guy, and the guy beats up somebody, and then they cut back to the rest of Raw, and that got me confused, because at first, like, the way they were hyping it and shit, I thought, oh, okay, what they're, like, in essence, the idea I was on board with, because what they were, from what I thought they were going to do, and God, how many times has this happened where I think they're going to do something smart and logical and productive, and they just don't do it at all. To really swerve me and make me look like an idiot. But if they were going to have this angle where the last hour of Raw was different and more gritty and more like, less bullshit, less people getting poisoned during matches, and less whatever that knee jack stuff was, and less of fucking ninjas and yada yada, 24/7 title bullshit. If it was like you can get all that shit out in the first 2 hours, and then the third hour can be like, a little bit more gritty because it's on later and it's a bit more hardcore, and stick around for this is a good shit, you know what I mean? And they delivered it like that, then that would be interesting, because that does break up the hours very well. You couldn't really do that in a 2-hour show, but to do it on a 3-hour show where you can say we can get all of our major storylines out of the way on the in the more childish part of the show, and in the last hour we can get those hardcore fans back, and you know what I mean, like but like they don't even have to be like gritty, like stereotypically gritty like they are now in the fucking Fight Club setting. But I mean, like, if they were a little bit more realistic, a little bit more, here's a real fight, or here's a real wrestling match, or here's just some good stuff that you could clearly differentiate from the first 2 hours of Raw, that would be a reason for people to tune in, at least for something. That would be interesting. It would be a good use of the art. It would also be an experiment to see what people actually want to see. Because then if you do that, if you make 1 hour very different from the other 2 hours, you can see the demographics, and you can see the changes, and you can see the viewership and all that shit. And then you can tailor your show more to be like one half of it or the other half. You can see what's more popular, and you can see what works, right? Doesn't that make sense? And I'm not a fucking businessman or a fucking TV executive or a fucking guy who knows anything about anything. But like that makes sense to me, right?
Yeah, I mean I agree with what you're saying in principle, I think, but like
theory.
But the danger is that if you're saying like, well, we'll put everything that's more gritty and realistic in the third hour, then in a way you're kind of saying that everything that comes before that is, like fake bullshit. Really, it's not
right. Well, on the flip side, what they're doing now isn't that like the same, only on a smaller scale.
Mm.
Like it's Shane McMahon going, "Hey, look at Raw Underground. It's not the same bullshit you've just seen. This is shit I want to see. Here it is." But we're gonna keep cutting back and forth between what we're pretending is really gritty, intense fighting, and then we're gonna cut back to in the arena where all the bullshit fighting happens. Like if you're gonna make that distinction, then that's what people are gonna think anyway. And that's what
Yeah.
they've done. They've made that distinction. The problem is they haven't been able to follow up that distinction with anything legitimate because they kept cutting back and forth between the two of them. So then you
Mm.
can really clearly see the difference between the two of them. And then also you can very clearly see the similarities between the two of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the way they've done it so far doesn't make any sense.
No.
Surprisingly enough, what a fucking chance. So
Yeah, the execution itself is probably what has kind of hurt the idea right out of the gate. Like I can't imagine it's the kind of thing that's going to attract new viewers or bring old viewers back or whatever, because at the moment it's just too ill-defined, like what it is, what they're hoping to achieve with this Raw Underground thing, like. And again, like who is actually involved in it as well? Like, most of the fights that were going on in it, it was just some random guy who we've never seen before getting beaten up. And like, why should we care about that? Like, part of the joy of wrestling is kind of becoming invested in the wrestlers as characters and performers. But like, yeah, if you see like some random guy who's you've got no connection to whatsoever, and he's just, he tackles someone to the mat and pounds him until Shane arbitrarily decides, nope, that's it, that's the fight over. It's like, well, okay, why should I care?
right, like they didn't do a very good they didn't do a very good job of introducing their new product because they go, this is it, and then nobody really knew what they were looking at, and it wasn't very well like hyped or delivered upon. It just kind of was like, here it is, and like there's no reason for people to care at all because they're like, oh, Dolph Ziggler's fighting some dude. I'm like, so he fights some dude every week on Raw. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Why is this one different? Cause he's not wearing trunks.
Yeah.
Is it because he's in his jeans but he's just punching a dude? Like, why? They've clearly made that problem already. Like, why is this fighting different from the other fighting? Real big mistake there. So I think both of us were like scratching our heads over what exactly this was supposed to be.
Yes.
And then after cutting back and forth from the ring to the whatever underground, Raw Underground, at some point MVP and his group, who despite only they're really coming together as a group over the last couple of weeks, not have a good week this time. Didn't do so well, which is a really good way to push your new heel stable, by the way.
Yeah.
Just a tip top, excellent booking so far. So what happened was these guys got really annoyed. It was MVP, Bobby Lashley, and Shelton Benjamin, and they were very angry about everything. And they were so angry that they decided to go to Raw Underground themselves. Like, what's weird is they didn't know about it, right?
Yeah.
But Dolph Ziggler knew about it.
Yeah.
And the fucking guy from the Viking Raiders knew about it.
Yeah.
How did they know about it and MVP not know about it? Right? Like, but let's disregard that because MVP was like, wow, that sounds like something I'm interested in somehow. Like, so then they go to Raw Underground, and then MVP declares either himself or themselves, like all three of them, like the new fucking owners of Raw Underground.
Mm-hmm.
And Shane McMahon says, okie doke. And then the three of those guys just beat up some other dudes. And then Shane McMahon's like, well, that was it for Raw Underground. We'll see you later.
Yeah.
And
What a weird ending.
that, that was the show. You're like, what the fuck? Whoa, whoa, whoa. So these guys, so they own Raw Underground now?
I mean, I guess so.
Why? They didn't know what it was 15 minutes ago. And then they just see a fucking they see a room like half full of like dudes with their shirts off and an incomplete ring and Shane McMahon, and they said, "Yes, we want this. We will purchase this." Can you imagine if you were on Dragon's Den and you were one of those big rich millionaires and somebody came up to you and was like, "Listen, I got a good idea for a TV show, right? There's half a wrestling ring and a bunch of dudes, and sometimes they punch each other, but it's clearly they're not punching each other. And it's in some fucking room in some house, but the lights aren't, gritty lights, because that's what people like, the lighting to be gritty. I mean, Shane McMahon's going to be there, and it won't make any sense. I need 6,000 million pounds, please. You're not going to buy it.
Well, I mean, you didn't mention the scantily clad women dancing as well. I mean, surely that's got to be worth it.
Can I ask a question about that? Just one question. Is at some point Shane McMahon standing beside the dancing women, right? Mm-hmm. And he says, like, "Whoa, stay down there, ladies," right?
Yeah.
They didn't do anything.
Nope.
What was that bit? Like Shane McMahon said something to those women that I don't like. I've seen that bit twice now, and I still don't really know what it is he said to them. And then that was all the introduction to the dancing ladies that anybody got. That was it. Like, we see him, but that's the only time anybody acknowledged them, right?
Yeah, no one else is paying any attention to him. I almost felt sorry for them.
Right. So if nobody else is looking at them, why are they there?
Yeah.
What? Like,
just for Shane's personal amusement, I guess.
Which is also super weird. But all of this, the way they presented it, all of this seems like it's for Shane's amusement. Like the way they presented it, it just seems like Shane McMahon, the billionaire son of a billionaire, is like, hey, you know what? This part of Raw is just where I dick around. See you later. Right? Like, that's the way they presented it. There was no like, just, hey, here's Shane and he's doing some stuff. Like, that's what they did. And everybody's just supposed to go with it. I'm so confused.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I don't really know like how to dissect this any further, because we can report on what happened, but like after that we're like, I don't like, apparently this is gonna be a recurring thing, right? They've already taped some shit for next week, right? Yeah. But what are they gonna do? Like, is it just going to be more of what happened this week? Is it just gonna be like MVP and his group like dominating other people in supposed shoot fights, and then that's all that bit does? Because if that's what it is, who cares? Yeah. Right? Like, what does that mean for Apollo Crews? Doesn't mean anything, because he and MVP are supposed to fight. What does that do for like R-Truth or Akira Tozawa, who Shelton Benjamin was fighting with earlier? You know what I mean? Like, how do those storylines wrap up to this new fucking whatever thing? I don't understand.
Yeah, there's definitely a question of what the long-term goal is with this. Like, I guess if they decided to keep putting the focus on the Hurt Business and using it as a vehicle to kind of push Bobby Lashley, you could say maybe they could build to like a Brock Lesnar match with Lashley, which is something that hasn't happened, which I think people have kind of wanted to see for a while. If they want to push Bobby Lashley as this kind of gritty real fighter, but if they're not doing that, then I've got no idea. It doesn't seem to have much of a direction at this point, but then at the same time I'm really reluctant to like completely shit on this, because it is week one, and I do appreciate WWE trying something different. And I don't want to judge it too quickly without seeing or where it goes, or at least, having some sort of idea of what direction it's taken. But at the same time, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I appreciate them doing that, but I would kind of prefer it if they just did the regular stuff better rather than trying to do other stuff different. And like, how much better would Raw be if there was just good matches, good feuds, nothing that felt like it's gonna insult the audience's intelligence, and just like do wrestling. I think I read somewhere that it was like 27 minutes of in-ring action on last night's Raw. So that's like 27 minutes out of pretty much 3 hours is like 1/6 of the show, of a wrestling show, which actually featured wrestling in it.
Well, does that include the Raw Underground business?
I don't think so, because who knows what was going on in those fights. Because
it doesn't really count as a ring, maybe.
It's
not really in-ring action. I do agree with you on both those points. You're like, wouldn't it have been a better idea to just make Raw better? Wouldn't the reason people are complaining about Raw and SmackDown just being not interesting and about losing viewers and about being like insulting to our intelligence, is it because we're not seeing enough bullshit shoot fights? Like that's never, nobody has ever been like, God, you know what I really fucking want? It's just Dolph Ziggler pretending to punch a dude for 2 seconds and then that's it. Like that's not what our problem is. So this is a strange solution to a problem they've just made up. But at the same time, I am willing to not necessarily give them the benefit of the doubt, because I have a sneaky suspicion that it's not going to end well, because it never does. But we'll let it breathe for more than a week before we, if they're still doing this in a month's time and it still sucks ass, then yes, we will most certainly come back with another podcast about how terrible it is. But for now, we're in this weird situation where we can just look at it and go, what the fuck was that? Right? You want to hear what I think it might be the worst thing of all? Is strap in for this. Is this isn't even like the top 5 stupidest fucking things they've done all year. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a weird, mystifying, confusing, unexplained thing, and you're like, this isn't even top 5. They have given us such bullshit already this year that now, instead of just being like, because I heard a lot of people were like, they didn't, they weren't happy about what happened or whatever. I'm like, well, at least this wasn't an eye for an eye match. You know what I mean? Like, I'll take this over that. I'll take this over the fucking swamp fight or the Money in the Bank bullshit,
Yeah.
Because at least this is technically closer. I mean, it's still a film. Like, I don't want to watch Fight Club. You know what I mean? Like, they're still trying to give this. I don't get this gritty look thing. I don't get it. I don't get the underground look. I don't get why they think that changing their camera style is going to appeal to a different group of people. That doesn't make any sense, because like you said, it just makes their other stuff look bush league. But also, if you are trying to do this to appeal to a different demographic, but you still splice in the old stuff from the other part of the show in, you're not going to hook those guys by showing them 5 seconds of a street fight and then 10 seconds of your regular bullshit. You know what I mean? It's just such a weird way to do business to me. It doesn't. I would have dedicated the whole hour to this, because then if it fails, then that's fine. Then exactly what didn't work and you can retool it. Because of the pandemic, they can get away with fudging an hour, really. production is hard, and they should really be, running with a limited crew and a limited number of people. So, I understand that they might want to make things easier for themselves. And to me, that if they made the last hour a little bit more stripped down and a little bit more, realistic in a wrestling sense, just that, but you stuck with it and was the full hour, then you would be able to see how that works instead of just I don't know. It's weird production.
Yeah.
Right? Very
I mean,
weird.
As well, it kind of strikes me as if like this is another case of WWE almost being embarrassed to be in the wrestling business, so they don't want to give like traditional wrestling matches out or present a traditional wrestling show anymore. They want to do all this extra stuff to kind of move away from like putting any kind of importance on everything that mattered in wrestling, back in the day. It's all about like this year, especially with the cinematic matches and whatnot, it's all about trying to create some kind of new spectacle that's I guess it falls under the like purview of entertainment, but like it's not really close to wrestling anymore. It's more like movies or cheap TV shows or whatever, and it's just weird. It's like WWE don't want to be a wrestling company anymore, almost, it seems like.
Which is weird, because if you look at the wrestling that they've given us this year, and you look at the entertainment that they've given us this year, what are you more impressed by, or what are you more entertained by?
I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, for me, it's always been about the wrestling.
It's the wrestling. Like, the bullshit cinematic stuff was good once in a blue moon. It's bizarre. I don't get this company at all. I don't think they know what they're doing either. I don't see why they would continue down the route of their silly entertainment bullshit whenever I don't really think it's getting over. I don't think a lot of the people who watch the show are super high on it.
No, it doesn't seem that way.
So I don't see how this is going to change a whole lot of stuff. And it hasn't really made either of us want to watch the show anymore. You know what I mean? Like, we weren't watching Raw to begin with, but now that this shit happened, neither of us are like, fuck, we got to see what happens to Bobby Lashley next week on Raw. I bet that's going to be really interesting and have something to do with Raw Underground, their cool new thing that they're bringing in. That's going to be hip with all the fucking 18-year-olds, Like, nobody's going to care. And this thing, I'll be honest with you, I think this will be dropped within a month.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if they can introduce something silly like this and make it into an angle, you know what I mean? Like, if this was never supposed to be a long-term thing anyway, and this is actually just a 3 or 4 week thing to, get somebody else over and work with MVP and the Hurt Business and become a thing, then fair enough, I guess it's what you said earlier, in that we have to kind of give it some time and let it breathe. But really, it's just mystifying. Like, we don't know.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm kind of getting to the point now where I'm almost hoping that WWE goes bankrupt. So
we don't have to watch this shit anymore.
Oh no! So The Rock can step in and buy it, and then he can fix it, like he will in XFL.
Yeah, we should talk about that as well, because what the fuck is that about?
Oh, I don't know. There's like rumors. It's quite dodgy that he's kind of he might be doing it on behalf of Vince McMahon, because Vince was rumored to be looking to buy everything back when it went into bankruptcy for, like, dirt cheap. But yeah, like, he kind of got called out on that publicly and had to say, "Oh no, I won't be doing that." But then
But
it just so happens The Rock was like, "Oh, I'll buy it then.
yeah, what a
Maybe
coincidence.
I'll give it to Vince for his birthday."
Yeah, The Rock, the man who has never once shown any interest in the XFL, suddenly with his partner company and some other, like, there's three kind of like people involved in this deal, and they've all decided to buy the XFL for 15 million, split
Yeah.
amongst the three of them, which is, as you said just a moment ago, trying to implicate Vince McMahon in being a swindler, an incredibly cheap price.
Mm-hmm.
15 million is very, very cheap. And I've seen some people, other investors and other people who were working with the XFL have like put in some kind of injunction against it
Yeah.
because they're like, who's getting that money? Like the league's not worth 15 million. Are we going to get paid for the stuff that we put into it? You know what I mean? Which I agree with.
Mm.
I like 15 million's way, like Vince McMahon didn't put 15 million into it, but way more than 15 million into that. So, 15 million is such a low price to get everything, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, something really seems suspicious about that. You know, I I agree with you there. It's a weird one. Very very. When did that happen though? That was yesterday, was it?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
This yesterday, as of the time of this recording, I should say, which would have
Yeah.
been Monday, which would have been the same day as they introduced Raw Underground, and everybody's talking about that instead of talking about the sale of the XFL. Now, isn't that suspicious? I think in media terms, that's called a dead kitten. Do you
Oh
know what
yeah.
do you know what this is?
No, I've never heard that before.
A dead kitten is, I believe it's called a dead kitten. If I'm incorrect, please somebody let me know. But it's a distraction technique. Politicians do this a lot. A dead kitten. We would have seen this kind of thing with Brexit a lot, where something ridiculous happens that everybody in the news talks about at the same time as something potentially catastrophic happens in Parliament, for example.
Mm-hmm.
This happened a lot during Brexit, where just stuff would happen, like bad stuff, deals going through or deals not going through, as it were, or people being shady and suspicious. But every time something newsworthy would happen, something always ended up coming into the popular culture route where, wow, something else has happened. Everybody's talking about this, and you're like, shouldn't the general populace be talking about this other more important thing?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a way to get people to focus on one thing instead of another thing. And it happens a lot in politics, and I imagine it happens a lot in business as well.
Yeah.
It seems like the kind of thing that does, where if there's a big deal going down, they'll try to find something else to take the heat, to cover for themselves while they get away with some shitty business practices.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems to be what's going on here. Very suspicious timing. I can't say for certain that Raw Underground and The Rock's very cheap purchase of the XFL are related, because technically the purchase of the XFL hasn't gone through yet.
Yeah.
They purchased, but it hasn't been official because the courts still need to decide what the fuck's going on over there. There's still bankruptcy stuff to figure out, and lots of technical stuff that I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
As I've made clear earlier, I'm no businessman. But yes, so the sale of the XFL hasn't properly gone through yet, and might not go through until, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks time.
Yeah.
Which is the time that I predicted Raw Underground will probably last for. No, like I said, I'm not gonna sit here and say that this was definitely distraction techniques, but you gotta admit it's very suspicious.
Yeah, and I think probably not just like the XFL stuff, but like there was a big investors call last week with Vince and all the WWE shareholders and whatnot, where he got kind of raked over the coals because of Raw's declining ratings and hitting record lows and stuff. And he was asked about that so much. So, I wouldn't be surprised if this whole Raw Underground thing as well is, a big reaction to that, to try and say, hey, look, this is what we're doing to try and, switch things up and do something different. And, maybe it's Vince's attempt as well to say, look, I've still got my finger on the pulse, because all those kids these days, they really like those shoot star fights, don't they? So that's what we're going to do now.
Good old Vince McMahon. I think that is also true. Yeah. Like, it's one of those things, like a different kind of distraction technique, where he says, look, we're making changes. Look, this will, it's a thing that people do with shareholders where they try to, obviously they try to make themselves look good to appease shareholders. Because the problem whenever you are a publicly traded company like that is that you are, beholden to your shareholders.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of have a lot of sway and a lot of influence. Whereas Vince McMahon would probably prefer it if he could just do whatever he wanted, right?
Oh, yeah.
So if Vince McMahon, in the middle of doing whatever it is he wants to do, is accosted by these investors and ordered to make some changes, he can just do bullshit like Raw Underground, because like that cost him nothing to film.
Yeah.
It's just, fucking some strange mood lighting and half a ring and a bunch of guys that are already there, and just film it. That doesn't take very long to set up. You could film like weeks worth of segments in a day if they wanted to. It would take no cost to him whatsoever. But he can say, look, we're trying new avenues, we're trying different things, we're trying to get older viewers back, we're trying to kind of this and that. And a lot of times the shareholders will buy it because they'll be like, well, he's being proactive, things are happening. But in reality, nothing has changed. Like we said, the last hour was still interspersed with, the regular last hour of Raw.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed. It's just still the same. If anything, they've just added more bullshit that people should get annoyed about. And, again, in a couple of weeks, we'll start hearing about this. We'll be like, investors aren't going to say nothing about it right now because they don't have numbers. They don't have statistics. They don't have anything that they can manipulate into a good or bad, like, statistic, But once they see numbers, they can turn it whatever way they want to.
Yeah, and technically, like, the Raw rating was up last night as well, like from a 1.6 million the previous week to 1.7. So whether that's anything to do with Raw Underground, we won't know until there's like a bigger like rating breakdown. But I mean, it's hard to think that. Well, I mean, it's one of those things where they hyped it enough that maybe people tuned in just to see what the deal was with it, like just out of interest. But if the big key is, will they keep coming back like next week and the week after to keep tuning in to see it again and again? And like, if it was me, like, I'm have no intention of watching Raw next week after this one. So maybe other people feel different, but yeah, it didn't grab me at all, didn't really do anything to sell me on the concept. So yeah, we'll see.
Right. Well, you're entirely correct in that the ratings for this week went up because they did hype it up. They were like, something's gonna happen. Shane McMahon's coming up, and like, I got interested because I could hear the rumblings of something going on. I'm like, well, we're gonna have to check this out, which is what we did. We ended up watching the show because we were intrigued about this. But the trick is, like you said, ratings don't really indicate how good a show is. This is something Jim Cornette has said a couple of times, but it's worth repeating whenever you start dealing with things like demographics and viewership and ratings and all of this kind of bullshit. Is that you could have a terrible show, but people won't know until they watch it.
Yeah.
So say this week's Raw sucked ass with their new concept. I mean, it didn't totally suck ass, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Say it was the worst show that has ever happened. It could easily still draw a decent rate because the fans of Raw will still tune into Raw. They didn't know it was going to be a shit show. The way you know it was a shit show is if in 4 or 5 weeks' time the ratings are declining significantly. Because then people just don't care. They're not coming back. You've given them such a bad show that they're not interested in. It's very hard to you can't really tell a whole lot. You get a general sense of how many people are watching your show, but you can't really tell a whole lot about how good or bad a show is just by that week's viewership. So the increase in Raw ratings right now looks good because they hyped it up and they give away kind of, you know, not spoilers, but they give enough intrigue to get people interested. And a rise in viewership is going to look good for them talking to their shareholders and shit. But, you know, for the dumbasses watching the show, it hasn't really done a whole lot for us, you know? How do we feel? I don't think either of us feel that enthused about it.
Yeah, like from that same point as well, they kind of hyped up WrestleMania this year as having the most like social media interactions or whatever it is, like people commenting on it, about it on social media and stuff and all that kind of thing. Which, okay, yeah, maybe that's a positive that lots of people are talking about it, but it doesn't get into the like nitty gritty of what they're actually saying. Like,
right.
Are those mostly positive comments, or people are shitting all over their show? Like, you know.
Yeah, I know what we were doing.
Yeah.
But that's exactly it. You know, you can make these numbers say whatever you want them to say, which kind of defies the purpose. All news is good news is what they say. If you're talking about people, then that's good. If you're not talking about them, then you're doing a really bad job. That's what they say. Although you would also imagine that if people are talking about how shite you are consistently day after day, that's also not a great sign about how you're doing. You know, maybe you might want to step the game up instead of giving us Raw Underground. But I don't know. I look forward to All Elite Wrestling Underground. In a couple of months. That'll be gritty. Looking forward to that. But really, I think the two of us are just a little bit mystified.
Yeah, but
a little confused, a little befuddled.
It's still early days, though. I mean, there's still time for them to turn this around.
Or make it even worse.
Yeah, there's that as well.
You know? Well, yeah, exactly. I think all we can kind of do is just wait and see. You know, not necessarily with bated breath. I don't think any of us care that much. But, hey, man, maybe they will. Maybe they'll turn it around. You know, maybe they'll make it some of the best Raw television we've ever seen. Maybe they'll make SummerSlam fucking amazing. I heard they wanted to put SummerSlam on a boat this year.
Yeah.
I really want them to do that. Put it on a boat. That'd be amazing. Like a boat or a beach party like they've been talking about. At least that's something fun and interesting. Like, we've been stuck in the Performance Center for so long. I'm like, that would be a little treat, you know?
Yeah.
I'm on board with that. But if it turns out they just do it from the fucking Raw Underground fight pit, I will be less happy. Then is there anything else you want to say about fucking bullshit ass Raw Underground?
Well, only just that it's kind of weird to me that, like, here we are in 2020 and MVP is all over this show. Like, he's one of the main focal points of Raw right now, and obviously he came in and kind of took over, like, the Raw Underground at the end there, but, like, how did we get to this point? I know the world's pretty weird right now, But yeah, like MVP it seemed like he was on his way to retirement this year. And he's come back and he's done a good job, and he's really benefited Lashley and Shelton Benjamin. But it's just we are in a weird situation where he's pretty much one of the main stars on Raw now. I just don't get it, man.
It is, but no, I agree. Like, I think he's been doing a great job so far. You know, he's great in the mic. Like, him and Shelton Benjamin together, that's a great idea. Because Benjamin's a great athlete and MVP's a great talker. Like, that's perfect. Same with him with Lashley. Like, that's, you know, it works. But it is weird. Like, they really were, like, they were all over the show. And MVP did a lot of work, you know, a lot of the heavy lifting. But at the same time, other than their bullshit at the very end with Raw Underground, they didn't really come across as seeming like a big deal.
Yeah.
Very, very strange.
Mm-hmm.
This whole fucking, you're right, dude. The state of wrestling 2020, it's all fucking strange. Quote that. That's our quote. It's all fucking strange. You know, Jonathan, that show. That's gonna be your quote name, because nobody who listens to this knows what your name is. It's not even really John. We just put that name on for the show.
Yep.
It's a pseudonym. He's really Shane McMahon. And he's going to be live in the Raw Underground Fight Pit next Monday night at 10 o'clock or whatever the fuck. I don't remember. Is it?
Yeah.
Anyway, everybody who's listening to the show, let us know what you guys think about this Raw Underground business and where it's going to go, and, you know, what kind of potential it has. I think it's got lots of potential if they wanted to do something with it. But I also think that we've said that a billion times about stuff in WWE, and they have a habit of, you know, fucking us over. So let us know what you guys think, and we might come back to this topic in the future. We shall see. But yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. And we will see you in the next episode. Or will we? We definitely will. We definitely will.